Welcome. We're having a party today. I saw
We are.
the invite accepts come through and I texted you. I was like, "Oh, thanks for making a party. I love this." So we have Kurt Patrick, who's chief badass at a census, Grant Barnhill, who is founder of Shift Workspaces in Denver, and of course Geo. And me, I'm the only one who wasn't at the immersive. So this will be fun. I can ask some, questions. And we thought we'd do a debrief on the GWA Immersive, which was in Mexico City. And if you're not following the GWA on the socials, there are lots of great videos that kind of give a little insight of how it was, but we want the inside scoop. So thanks for joining us, guys.
Thanks for
Thanks for
having
having
us.
us. Yeah,
Geo.
no, I'll give a quick recap of it. So it was really we decided May of last year, so almost 9 months in the making of planning. And it was just we fell in love with the building when we toured EOS and everything else, and we just thought it'd be a great opportunity. And part of the hurdle we had to overcome is we are global, but we don't have a global outreach really to that extent. And so going and recreating relationships and it was funny when we first announced it. I can't tell you how many people were like, Mexico City, I can't wait. I've always wanted to go. I'll tell you, Grant and Sid were one of the first ones to sign up, and Kurt had to jump through all kinds of hoops to get approvals to go from personal and professional standpoints. And it was awesome. We had 90 people registered, 28 speakers. And the awesome part about it is 75% of the people that were there had never been to a GWA event before and were Latin. Some whether it be Mexico, we had people come from Spain, we had Colombia,
Wow.
we
Peru.
had Puerto Rico, which is technically part of the US, but still Latin America. But it was awesome because, and I'll let Grant jump into these numbers because he knows them better than I do. But we had Lexi, they had their annual meeting. Typically they go skiing and they decided to do it in Mexico City. So Grant, you want to talk about how many of y'all there was and what y'all did for the weekend? It's pretty
Oh,
awesome.
we had such a great time. So we were at a house in Valle de Bravo, which is a lake about 2 hours outside of Mexico City, and we rented an Airbnb right on the water. And I think we had eight or nine people, but it was just a great weekend. Went sailing on Saturday, which was a lot of fun. And for me, the value really is just in the interaction and the conversations with people. And I had a lot of great talks with Kane, and it was just a really, really good group of people.
Wait, does anybody wanna know where I was over the
What
weekend instead of
where were you,
Mexico
Jamie?
City, instead of sailing with Grant? I was at the San Mateo County Event Center for a gymnastics meet, and I spent both Friday and Saturday night entering scores for the men's gymnastics meet.
That sounds like so much
It
fun.
was excellent.
How'd your husband do?
Yeah, yeah, seriously. At least it wasn't janitorial duty, which was my last assignment for the required volunteer hours, in addition to the checks we write to the gym.
Are
I
you
mean,
not the person divvying out the responsibilities at this
yeah,
point, Jamie?
seriously, I should sign up for that next time. I mean, in true Enneagram 3 fashion, though, I am making good friends with her. She and I are gonna be tight, and I will never again get a janitorial assignment. But anyway, it's that weekend every year, and the Lexi trip keeps happening then, so
Can I ask a logistical question for Lexi? What is the admissions process? If somebody who's listening who wants to get involved with the League of Extraordinary Co-working, for those of you who might not know what Lexi is it taking new entrants?
I believe so. I don't know a lot of the details as far as what the criteria is. I know that I think we have members from, man, I believe it's 50 plus organizations, but I don't know what the admission criteria is.
I'm not sure that they are taking admissions, but you can go to the website. There's
Okay.
alexi.org. It's possible that it's on hold, but for particular markets, they may open it up. And it is an international group. So we have some folks in London, Australia. I'm trying to think of where else. Uh
What about Mexico?
Nairobi. I don't think there's anybody from Mexico in there.
Nobody
I
in
think after this weekend, Javier may manage to
Oh wait,
slide on in there.
Javier. I think Javier's a member. Yeah, Javier is
Yes.
a member. Yeah, yeah. Good point.
He
Yeah,
and
so I mean, it was really cool because outside of Lexi, we had 25. I ordered 25 translators, so I don't know how many Americans we actually had, but between Americans and Canadians,
Wait, why do you need
were
25 translators? What does
because
it
the
mean?
entire thing was in Spanish.
Yeah, but you
So
don't
it
have
was
to
There
like
like
the
weren't
one
25 individual translators talking to the Americans, Jamie.
translation devices.
Headsets.
Sorry.
It was like the United Nations where there was one translator and
Yeah.
they're in this little like cone of silence and they were translating what the speakers were saying over the headphones. That would be very expensive if there was 25 individual
Oh,
translators.
that's okay. Oh, the headsets. That's
Translation
what I'm like,
devices.
what do you
Sorry.
need 25?
That's hilarious.
Like I'm my own personal,
Right.
translator to
Yes,
go
whispering in
interact.
your ear, whispering sweet nothing. You get to choose who your translator is. You get a menu, and you're like, "I would like Pablo, please." The towel boy. No,
So
so it was awesome.
the venue was in a building where EOS operates, but it looked fantastic. It looked like a great venue.
yeah, it was one of the
Yeah, it was
most
an awesome building.
impressive.
Grant, you want to talk about it because I know it's something you loved about the architecture of it.
Oh, it was
Yeah.
incredible. Yeah, so it's interesting because there was a house that was originally sitting on the lot that they had to move, I think 25 or 30 feet towards the street. And before they built this high rise, it had to be, man, it had to be 50 plus stories. But it was architecturally, it was one of the most beautiful buildings I've ever seen. And the US space was really unbelievable. Some of it was 2 stories, but just striking design. And Javier, we were talking and he said that they had built it out for $100 a foot. That was, I think, 6 years ago. But what an amazing value. In the States, that build out now in Denver would have cost $350 a foot. I mean, it was super creative.
The house is still there, Jamie, and Apple it's their Apple store. And so you walk in and there's this just the corner of the house is just in the lobby with glass. And so you look through and the Apple store is in there. So it's pretty incredible.
Wait,
Um,
I want to ask Grant because Grant's known for hospitality and he has this unique concierge program. Had you seen the EOS spaces before? And I've been
No, I
dying
haven't.
to go because I've I know of it. Geo sent me photos. We've had their bartenders, do things on GWA events. I'd love to hear what your impression was.
Yeah, really impressed. I think that, what's interesting too about their team is just the longevity of, the length of time that their team members have been a part of iOS. I saw so they have name tags and that basically say how many years you've been on the team, which is interesting because what you focus on grows, right? And so the longevity for a lot of these people were 10, 12 years. But on the hospitality side, I think that, every space that we were in had a barista, which is interesting. We have a part-time person who does that, but they have a full-time barista slash bartender. The members are allocated 2 drinks a day, and it could be a coffee drink or it could be a cocktail, but very, very engaging, very attentive, very well trained, and very happy. I think that Javier has built this really great culture where people really enjoy working together. They have a lot of fun, it looks like. And that was great to see from the outside.
yeah, and I mean, I know I've talked about this on the podcast before, but just to remind people, so I showed up last May and I was intending to see one location before you knew it. I spent a day and a half with Lauda, his right hand person, going location by location with a chauffeur, and everywhere I stopped, they had a coffee ready, and we already know I've got hyperactivity already without adding that kind of caffeine. And so I was like, I cannot drink another cappuccino or my head's gonna explode.
Yeah.
But, going back to the lack of depth that we have of relationships and overall brand awareness in Mexico, that the EOS team was a huge part of us pulling this off, right? And so Indy and Eunice and Lauda were huge in growing that. But it was just incredible to watch, as I've spent the last several months planning that, but even the days leading up to the event, like I was at the venue till 12:30 the night before with one of their coordinators because we were doing back to Kurt's explanation, the translation devices need to be set up. Everything needed to be wired into the sound system, but they had the snacks. He was putting all the snacks together. Signs, we had a little, issue with signage. So he was trying to resolve all those things. But then I got there and he was back. He got 2 hours of sleep and was back up there at 5 a.m. I met up there at 6:30 and the team was already there. They showed up in their black. There was probably 15 of them. And I still, I recorded a piece of it. I didn't get all of it, but Eunice basically stood up there and she goes, "This is what's going on today. This is what GWA is." And they'd seen me around a couple times between Mexico City and then I went to Monterrey. And she basically said, "Look, today we will not say no to anything or anyone." She said,
The proof of that happened when Grant, Flip, myself, and a couple others went to the bar that was closed and padlocked shut. And they went in the back and grabbed a screwdriver and pulled the lock off the door just to get us some beers. So they live that motto.
And
it's
they,
true. I mean, that's what they do. Grant.
Yeah, remarkable. And everybody, it's interesting because it wasn't just one person in the EOS organization. It was everybody I interacted with. We toured 2 of their locations and I probably had some type of interaction with 10 or 12 different team members and it was stellar.
How does Javier pull this off when he's like, traveling the world?
Laura.
That team is
Laura.
so amazingly well run. You could tell that they were just completely focused on the task at hand. There was so many of them. It was amazing to see. It was a well-oiled machine. The tours were incredibly informative. It was both in English and Spanish. So they divided us up into those groups. They made sure that nobody was wanting for anything. I probably had more drinks on those tours than I did the rest of the evening. That's not true. But they made sure that we were just so well taken care of. And it was such a cool experience to see it.
So this tells you how passionate are people about working for EOS. Andy drives 2 hours each way every day, 5 days a week. She's got a 6-year-old at home, and she basically EOS pays for a driver that drives her in from Querétaro, and she works all day, and then he drives her home 2 hours, and then does it again 4 more days every week.
Yeah.
And so that's how passionate she is about the company, and that's how well they take care of her. And that's what she means to the company, right? They obviously wouldn't do that for just anybody, but that just gives you kind of a loyalty that they have. And then further going out from EOS, it was interesting because as we interacted with other operators, it's kind of like, people either have worked for Regis or they worked for EOS, right? And so we toured a couple of other spaces. I mean, Grant and Kurt Comunal, the were a real cool one we looked at that Grant was like, "Is this copyrighted in the US?" Comunal sounds like a great name, but they have an awesome rooftop patio. But I don't know if you know, Pao, the lady that toured us around that day, who had been on the panel the day before, she had been in EOS for some time. So it was really cool to just see those interactions. And then the Heinz speaker had been with Regis for 10, 11 years. She's now basically run the director of operations for all of Heinz for Mexico. It was just so interesting just to overcome the dynamic that we've overcome here and worked so hard, Jamie, with your hard work and foundation of just getting people to be more collaborative and open and realize, hey, we're competitors, but at the same time, we're collaborators too. And so I can't tell you how many times I had to have that conversation leading up to the event where people are like, so EOS is inviting in their competition, or they're going to be on a panel together, or they were on the tours looking at each other's locations. And so I think it was just really cool to see the interactions. I mean, we made 5 stops on the tour and all 5 locations were completely different. I mean, and Kurt asked me for the rundown earlier, so he had little descriptions next to each one. But I mean, the first stop we made was at Heinz, and it's been really cool to just see Annie continue to deploy the Square product. We'd obviously had the event 2 years ago in Houston. And we've seen, I think, individually some of the different things that Heinz has been doing. Kurt's been working real closely with them, but just to see that roll out was pretty cool.
And those spaces are crushing it. Annie said that those teams are amazing to work with. The spaces are doing incredibly well. In fact, one was doing so well that an ownership group came to them and said, "We'd like to do this in one of our buildings," and they stepped in to manage that. So it's the proof is in the pudding, and Annie's leading an amazing team there.
She's super talented, and the space was really impressive. And just the story of kind of how Heinz is approaching it too, I think is really interesting, where they're trying to monetize space that would be difficult to lease, and it's a great story.
Yeah,
And I think the
it's
interesting part is Hine doesn't own all these properties, right? They're third party managing in some cases. They're, in some cases it's some kind of JV. And so poor Annie, everyone thinks, they're all privately owned and it's like Annie just gets to go in and do whatever. No, she has to go in and I think there's no secret here because I've heard it outside of Annie. It's harder for her to sell within Heinz than it has been, I think, for her to sell outside of Heinz. Kurt, you were about to say
Was-
something?
Yeah, I was saying you're dealing with this huge machine and you're selling the concept every single time. But as more successes are under anyone's belt, it becomes easier to tell the story and prove it out. I mean, the Heinz location that was closest to where we stayed, Giovanni. I'm not going to attempt to mention what the angel was called because it's in Spanish and I'll butcher it. But the co-working floor is on one of the higher floors that was having trouble leasing, but it's proven out so well that they're going to add an events business that'll look out on this beautiful plaza with the angel. Help
Geo,
me out.
this is your cue.
This is
What's the
El
name?
Ángel de la Independencia.
that one.
That.
So yeah, so the fact of the matter is it's a tough sell. She's doing an amazing job. She deserves every ounce of credit she gets.
Kurt, what were you most surprised by at the event?
First impression was how many people were just completely fluent in English, and I felt totally shit for not paying attention in high school and college Spanish because I was like, "There's no reciprocity here. I can't do much other than say gracias." So it was really cool how easy it was to communicate with everyone that was involved. How just open and generous everyone was, wanting to share their stories and hear why I was in Mexico, which is a very cool story that I'm happy to share later. But just the uniqueness of all the build outs, like Fulabora in this Beaux Arts style facade of a building that you go into, and there's this unbelievable courtyard that they've programmed all of it so that the members in the traditional office, which is in the very back of it and in a tower behind it, can benefit from all of that, but you would never know it from the street. It was very much like this little secret garden that you walked into. And I think that was actually going to be the WeWork headquarters for LATAM. I think I heard that from on the tour. So it was a very, very cool space.
That
And you
was the
see,
coolest co-working venue I've ever seen.
I agree.
Wow.
That was unbelievable.
I agree. And then Satch felt very, very familiar. Someone likened it to more like a Serendipity Labs type of feel, which I totally get. So the diversity of space that was there as well, and they all seem to be doing pretty well. And then you went to Comunal, and it was unbelievable. Class A plus build out, rooftop looking over the entire city. It really gave you a scope of just how vast Mexico City was. That I wasn't prepared for that. Being a guy who goes to New York every day, I mean, that's a very different big. It's all vertical, but you have these high rises kind of placed in the middle of these neighborhoods. It's a very different type of kind of cityscape, and you only really get to appreciate it from above. So that was really cool. And then iOS, it's really just the way that the staff made me feel that was incredibly special. They had really cool space too.
Well,
Grant, what was your take on this? Yeah.
Well, the demand in Mexico City, there was a stat that in one of the presentations that talked about co-working demand increasing 12% a year in Mexico City. And I think that either portfolio wide or in one location, EOS occupancy was 97%. And so I think that Laura's been trying to talk about expanding because the demand is so strong. And that was one of the things too, just talking with other operators, that it seems like even in the US, but especially in Mexico, that demand in the last couple months has really picked up. You know, that for us, it's really felt like almost pre-COVID. And I had a couple moments in this last, maybe 30 days or so where I felt like we were back. And I think that there's obviously a lot of concern about tariffs, for the Mexican operators and the Canadian operators. But other than that, I think that on the demand side, it's been strong. That seemed to be the consensus
Yeah.
with participants.
So they opened the session with one of the speakers from Instant, who said that they opened it up pretty dramatically. Said this is a really critical moment in our industry, one that we really need to take note of, because we are now at a point where there is not enough supply to meet the demand. And he went into the reasons why, but it was kind of like a slap in the face. Like, I don't know that that's the situation of the rest of the country.
Everywhere.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, everywhere. But it was kind of this massive issue. And I looked around to see like if the audience was agreeing, and they were all nodding. They're
Oh.
like, yeah, there's too much demand, which is a wonderful thing.
I think Mexico's on fire. I mean, just from what we've seen and heard, it just seems like a really, really great market.
Yeah, and I think, part of what I enjoyed seeing over my time prior to this event that led up to my overall just curiosity about Mexico City and just how the markets were doing and everything was like when I was touring those spaces back in May, like Roku and LinkedIn and BBVA, all these big names were in the spaces, and they didn't have like an office. They had like a team space. They had private offices and a conference room and a think tank in a corner. And so they're just further along than we are, right? And
Well,
so I
maybe
think that
potentially
was,
also a different customer segment, right? That enterprise. I mean, EOS kind of has built their brand on that, right? I mean, first they've been operating for 20 years.
yeah,
Is that right? And they have
yeah.
40 locations, like Class A office buildings, enterprise customers. I mean, they really picked that segment and then went hard after, the hospitality piece. So, they're going to attract that. But to be able to sell, premium space and that much of it potentially is a, it's a great market.
Well, yes and no, right? Because they actually have centers that are directed specifically towards entrepreneurs and small companies, right? And then they have some that are, they've got a couple locations. We didn't look at them last week, but then they have locations that are like less offices, and then it's more of the membership open space type deal. So they've even created products within EOS, and there's certain buildings they're like, oh yes, this is more corporate, and then, oh, this is more entrepreneurial, and oh, this is more, kind of freelance membership type driven. And so I think that's the interesting part, is just to see the evolution of how the deployment is. Even, I mean, you mentioned Kurt Satch, and he was one of our speakers. Mauricio's been coming to GWA for a while. Jamie, I think he mentioned that he had met you at one of the conferences, but he's been coming for a bit. And
What brand?
part of Satch, and then he's got Zora Technologies. And so that's what I was going to get to, is he saw a need for, Kurt, you're the tech person, so you'll understand this better than me or be able to explain it better, but kind of a back office need for delivering some of this technology to spaces. And so he created Zora in order to do that. Kurt, correct me where I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, 100%. And the neat thing that they're able to do is Mexico requires stamps on invoices. So any invoice that goes out to prevent money laundering, they need a government stamp, basically approving that that's in fact, a kosher document to go out. So
How much does a stamp cost?
yeah, it's clever. It's definitely a clever solution for an industry need.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think that was just the caliber. We have great speakers here, and we're trying to do better at bringing new faces and everything on. But I mean, we were able to get people within, we Instant again was able to bring in a couple enterprise people. We were able to get different takes. I think that was a really unique part with having new people there, was the interaction, and you didn't know exactly who someone was or what the delivery of their space was. And then they talked about it on Wednesday. And then when we got to actually walk in and, you walk in, back to Kurt's point, and you walk into kind of Colabora and this huge pad. You're like, wait, this is a home. This is a residential multi-zoned building. And you walk in, you're just like, it blows your mind away because it's, and I'll let Grant jump in here because it's a combination of like old and new. And I don't know, Grant, you were kind of blown away by the whole thing.
Yeah, it was a couple 100-year-old huge home and attached to a very modern office building. And they do that. I think that whenever you do a historic renovation, you've got to distinguish between what was original and what was new. And it was very obvious what was new, but really well done and kind of a concept that I've never thought of. But it was very it was, even though it felt very homey, and comfortable, it was still professional, and
Yeah.
that's kind of a feat, I think. That when you think of a house, you think of that it might be a little unprofessional and might be hard to bring clients in, but this was exactly the opposite.
And
Let's be
back to
honest,
Kurt's
it
original.
was an estate. It was not a house.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
This
an
was like a,
yeah, it's a better much better description. Definitely.
yeah, this was huge.
Well, and to Kurt's point, so much of the homes in Mexico, they're not like our homes where, you have a front yard and then you have a home and then a backyard. It's literally you have a wall with a garage and a door and you walk in through and you don't know what's on the other side of those things, right? And so I think that's the interesting part is as you're driving through these neighborhoods, you don't know what's on the other side of these things. And so I think that's the first part. The second part is zoning, right? I mean, here in the US, you're either residential or, I mean, with the exception of, some really cool, warehouse buildings or stuff like that, Grant, that you guys probably haven't, or everywhere does, but Rhino or stuff like that. But you're not like in a residential community and you're like, oh, you can use this for retail or like this. He had retail. He had a fitness, like kind of like a yoga concept in there. He had enterprise. He had individual entrepreneurs. It's just one of those things that you can't pull off in very many parts of the world. Certainly the US, I think it's almost impossible to pull off unless you're in a warehouse district or something like that. And so, yeah, it was really cool to see that. And then, shifting to Comunal. I mean, Comunal is basically based out of Peru. They've got, 16 locations in Peru and decided that Mexico City was their next stop and they're up to 5 locations. And so it was interesting to see that too, right? Because business in Peru is different than it is in Mexico. So they've had to shift and adapt to that. But it's so cool the way, I mean, you walked in and you would have, I mean, the deployment, the execution, the overall design was incredible.
Yeah, it's a class A plus building. I mean, you could have been in Hudson Yards for all you knew if you just got plopped down there. It was, that is another thing that I think was really interesting. That building, the Class A building, was right next to like a tire shop and a McDonald's on the first floor. It's just wild how this stuff was just kind of like scattered about. But and then
It's like
the
Houston
history-
zoning.
right. I didn't want to throw
It's
Houston under
just
the bus.
there's no continuity, and in some ways, it feels a lot more authentic that way to me.
Yeah, you're right, because it's not, and Kane was mentioning that too. Kane from IQ was on the tours with us. He's like, this is just you never see this in Canada. It's like building is next to a building. That's it. There's no other option.
I don't know. Houston had some funky zoning. Just saying. Is it Houston
Yeah.
or one of the
Yeah,
Texas?
Houston does.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my point, that they allow, a church next to a strip club.
Right.
And Mexico City's very, very similar. Not that I've ever been to either, but no, I've been to church.
Yes. Okay.
Uh,
Wait, Kurt has an interesting story about how he ended up in Mexico City.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's kind of very timely with the launch of Census Illumo. We're no longer tied to fiber and all of the things that are very centric
Mm.
to data centers and needing to be close to places that require latency permissions and things like that. So the fact that we're now able to have an access control product that is a completely standalone solution that can integrate with the likes of Office R&D, likes of Nexus, likes of Yardi to better monetize, manage, and control potential lost revenue for meeting rooms, which these tours proved out. And I think everyone who runs a business recognizes right now, they are a significant part, if not the biggest part of your revenue in managing your spaces. Now, a tap to book functionality with Apple and Google wallets has been long overdue in this industry. And we've rolled it out today, actually. So
Wow,
we're recording
congrats.
this on the 4th of March. Thank you very much. And starting to have conversations with operators from all over the world about it. It seems like it's going to be a really, really interesting time for us.
Sounds like
We'll
Kurt's
definitely
gonna
send
get
you a
the boondoggles.
sponsorship.
Yeah.
We'll spend them as sponsorship invoice after this.
Oh yeah, that's totally fine.
Wait.
Care of Ian Milne.
Gio always says we like to keep people updated on industry news. So
Yeah, this is great. This is breaking. I know this will air next
breaking
week, but
news.
it's still pretty good. Coming to a meeting room near you.
Wait, so can I
Yeah.
Apple Pay to get into the meeting room?
Yeah, so that's the whole idea, is that it'd be tap, book, and pay all through your Apple Wallet. So
Okay, I
or
do really
Google
love that.
Wallet. Yeah. So
Oh.
all of the things that prevent you from easily booking something have been solved for it. Latency, we're using readers that are right above the door, and we're using a very, very cool, I should have in my background, right? Wall mounted device that can give you the status of the room. White for available, green for booked, red for unavailable, those types of things.
Okay.
And you can set it to all different colors. So if you want to celebrate Pride Day, it could be a rainbow. You can set it
Rainbow.
to-
Nice.
green might be confusing for St. Patrick's Day. I noticed your St. Patrick's Day themed shirt.
In March.
It is
Right.
March.
It is
Exactly.
March.
I'm seasonal.
Seasonal. Yeah, and I think, kind of shift into the way from that because I mean, Kurt didn't know that this was deployed, right? I mean, I think it was you were booking as y'all were making this decision, right? I mean, it was one of those kind of timing situations.
Yeah, timing wasn't my favorite to get it approved. I candidly was paying for myself to go either way. I was prepared to either fund it myself or for the business to fund it. So timing was just right for that. But there was no way I was going to miss it. It was a very, very cool experience.
So I think, Jamie, you may not know this, but a lot of going back to Grant and a lot of his hospitality play kind of goes back to his time in Mexico and his stay at Rosewood. And I think some people have heard that on the podcast, but for those that haven't, I mean, Grant, what is the Mexican or Latin culture? How has it influenced your business, your personal life even, right? Because I think you're officially a residential owner of Mexico at this point, right?
I am. Yeah, we're actually building a house in Baja right now. And we just have enjoyed going down there so much and love the people, and it's just such a rich, magical country. And so different than, I grew up going to Mazatlan and Cancun and kind of all of the touristy beach spots. But when you get into the interior, like in San Miguel de Allende and some of the other and Oaxaca, it's striking. But yeah, so we were staying at the Rosewood in San Miguel de Allende. This was about probably 7 years ago, and Sibyl and I were laid out by the pool, and then all of a sudden, someone pops out of the kitchen, or the bar area with a plate full of watermelon with tahini on it, with toothpicks. And we had a couple of those. We're like, "Oh, that's really good." And then 45 minutes later, it was a mini margarita, and then 30 minutes after that, it was something else, and we looked at each other and we said, "Well, why don't we do this?" And that was the beginning of our whole hospitality program that Morgan Trigo just is an absolute rock star. Shout out to her for all that she does for chefs. She's done such an incredible job on that front. But that was the basis, that was the start of it. And, since then it's iterated into a lot of different things, but a lot of the origins of that of the way we think about hospitality have come from staying in hotels in Mexico.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that goes back to kind of why EOS is able to do what they do, and we experienced that. I mean, so the EOS team literally had like grab bags for everyone that had a book in it and a personalized note on it
Yeah,
Thank you for
handwritten
coming.
note.
Yeah, that same thing. They had these basically it was a roll with a piece of art in it, and so I just think the hospitality play in Latin America is very different, right? I think that you know it's pretty common there versus here. We're like, oh my gosh, Shift is awesome, right? Because they roll this out and they do all this great stuff, which they're one of the premier co-working spaces in the country with hospitality. But in Mexico, for Grant to walk in and be odd it's a pretty big thing. And so, I think that's the cool part is that we had people that were able to go over there and see and experience things that I know are going to, affect how Grant deploys some of his future projects. Kurt's able to take that back and talk about, what he experienced. And that's with us going from the US to Mexico. And I know within Mexico, the operators that came from different parts of the country or even within the same city were able to see different things that they were able to take away. And I think that's the really cool part that we're able to take away from Juicy, GWA, Immersive, these different events, right? Is how do we continue to learn and grow together and collaborate and do all these great things. I think that's the awesome part about it that we're able to bring to the table through these, smaller intimate events, but also the personalized side, which I want to get into now, is getting time to spend. I mean, Grant and I hadn't seen each other, really spoken over the last 8-9 months. And so we were able to reconnect and spend time together over meals, but also then we got to go, and you heard part of it earlier. We got to go to the pyramids on Friday, which are just outside of town. And so I was already I had been probably in 20 years since I was a kid. And so Kurt and Zach and I were going to go, and we were able to shift things around so that Grant and Kane could join us as well. And we just had a great time up until we went down some steep steps. And Grant and I,
I was
Grant
waiting.
and
I
I
was
had an
waiting to see if you were going to
experience.
mention that.
Did
Yeah,
you
If
fall?
he didn't, I would.
Ah,
no, let's just say Grant and I are both afraid of heights. And so literally we looked down and it was pretty funny.
we're
There's
doing the
some great
crab.
video and pictures.
We're doing the crab crawl down this really steep, and of course someone was videoing, and it was listening to that video later with with his nervous laugh and me, looking like I was 102 years old going down the pyramid. It's
I
With
would
his
have been in the
Gatorade
same
bottle
boat.
bouncing down the steps.
Oh
He's
my
like,
God.
no, I don't need the Gatorade.
Yeah, that was,
Meanwhile, all the while, Kane was just sprinting up and down,
yeah,
He's
like
yeah.
always
Rocky.
lapping.
No
What?
problem whatsoever.
The triathlete.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we had a lot of. I mean, we had like I mentioned earlier. I don't know. I don't think we'd hit record yet for the Enneagram conversation, but we had an hour drive out there, so we were able to talk about the Enneagram and talk about a bunch of different things that we'd seen and experienced. So that was a lot of fun, and then just being able to do life together, right? That's what I love about it is we were out there. I mean, I didn't know Grant was afraid of heights and he didn't know I was afraid of heights. And then Kurt and I are super close. He's like, I've never heard you laugh like that before. I'm like, because I was scared shitless.
Your
Yeah.
scared little girl laugh.
Yeah.
I think he was just terrified if he ate shit that I would never ever let him live it down. So that was
Yeah, the connection was really great, and I think that it's true. You're talking before about the culture of the Mexican shared workspaces, uh, sharing information and kind of working with each other and collaborating, and I think that's one of the really great things about GWA and about Lexi is that there's a transparency and a sharing between members that is goes pretty deep. I mean, I know that there's probably 4 or 5 operators that we talk to consistently. We exchange financials and branding documents and, talk about growth initiatives. And it's a space that to me is very low ego and very collaborative. I mean, everybody's willing to help one another. I think it's super unusual I think that's true in at least the people that I know in real estate here in Denver, but Lexi and GWA, I think it's pretty remarkable and rare to have that level of transparency in a business organization.
for me. It felt like the pre-COVID times where there was just such an energy, such a buzz in the room because it was still so new for all the folks who were attending GWA for the first time. So it was really refreshing to see that from my perspective. And then, you have your stalwarts, you have your grants, your flips, your canes, which is nice. I mean, it was a really, really good experience. I hope you do another one internationally.
Well, that was going to be my question. You've set a bar, Geo. What's next?
The streets of San Francisco. So we're working on finalizing that, right? So we'll do the plan is this year to do San Francisco at the beginning of June. We've got the big conference in Chicago in October, first week in December in Atlanta, and then we go back to Mexico to Monterrey, probably same time, February. Monterrey is actually the headquarters for EOS, and different city, different feel, but yet still the same culture and things like that. But just like the US, different big cities have different industrial focuses and kind of a different culture. It'll be fun to experience that. But yeah, definitely we'll go back to Mexico next year. Kane would love to do Canada, so we got to try to figure out where we can squeeze in Toronto here or there. So maybe next year we do a US city, a Canadian city, and a Mexican city. And so that would really
the G in GWA.
Right.
Yeah.
But and also Gio, just a huge thank you to you. I know that was not an easy feat to accomplish. Yes, you leaned heavily on EOS, but without you, it wouldn't have happened. So thank you.
Yeah, I was
Of
just
course.
thinking that, Gio, you did a great job. And I thought that it was one of the better run. I don't know what you'd call it, a seminar or gathering. It's one of the better ones I've been to. So nice job.
Yeah, well
I
done.
appreciate that. I've this is where I've tapped into my Jamie personality, right? She's got all the organization side and does so much of that so well. And so she was able to lay a great foundation for us. And then just, I think a big part of it that I've been able to learn and grow from going back to the healthy 8 is letting other people step in and help out, right? And so like I told the EOS team leading up to it is we've done the hard work, and now whatever happens is going to happen, and stuff always goes awry, and it's just especially in this case 80% of those people have never been, so they don't know the difference, right? And so I think that's the really cool part, is when you're able to have that space to give other people the ability to step in and do what they're good at. It changes things dynamically for everyone, right? Because there isn't someone trying to be a control freak and everything else. And so I think that's a big part that I think we're all trying to grow and be better at. I mean, I know Grant, you've got an incredible team that you kind of allow to do what they need to do. And that's what allows for Shift to run the way it runs.
Yeah, it's a really great group of committed people, and we're building out our executive team, and I think that we're really looking forward to growing again. And the last couple of years have been haven't really known where things were going to go, and we're finally at a point now where we feel that we're either entering the trough or coming out of it, and that we're ready to start booking up.
Yeah, and you've got some really cool ideas and things you're working on. We won't get into them here as you continue to let those things bake and execute. But I think that's the exciting part is, getting to see the industry grow, getting to see the different brands grow, getting to interact. I mean, from a personal standpoint, I've been telling you for several years that, I'd love to see you continue growing and evolving the brand. And so I think timing is such a big part for all of us, right? I think, we talk about COVID like it happened yesterday, but it really was something that happened the last 5 years that changed the trajectory of so many of our personal lives or professional lives, how things are overall executed and how we deploy different things. I think we're continuing to see that evolution as we're kind of finding some stable ground coming out of all those questions. And, overall, just I think we were very reactionary from a workplace standpoint as to what we thought the future was going to be and how to deploy it. And I think we're starting to see some stability, if you will, from that standpoint, as this becomes a part of the strategic response to some of these large organizations.
Yeah, it really seems like that the shared workspace business is the solution for a lot of the things that people don't like about traditional office, right? In the way that we work. I think that we're really positioned in a great. There's going to be a lot of opportunity in this category going forward, I think.
Yeah, no, so excited just to see the conversation continue to evolve. I think San Francisco is going to be awesome because kind of like New York, we'll be able to tap a different audience than would normally not come to one of these events, right? There's so many real estate professionals there. There's so many big property managers there. It's funny, some people, as I've brought up San Francisco, and some may be on my screen right now, are like, why would you do San Francisco? And I'm like, it's still one of the largest cities in the country with a big enterprise base and a huge population, and even the product mix there has been pretty incredible from what I've seen, right? Everything from kind of grassroots community stuff to the corporate, like Heinz is finishing up another square there as well. And then and you've got everything in between, right? And so excited to kind of continue that conversation on the West Coast that we started on the East Coast and then even Mexico. But just, I think that's the interesting part, is how do we keep pulling in new faces, new personalities, new thought leaders, right? And I think that's the really cool part about it, is how we continue to come together as a family and friendships and colleagues, but yet continue to bring other people along for the ride that can help us be better.
And it's interesting too when you think about all the boxes that a lot of our interactions check, that we all are really committed to our organizations, and so we get a chance to talk about something that we're really passionate about, but it's also friendships and having fun, and it's very dynamic. And I'd encourage anyone listening that if you haven't been to an event, I would encourage you to do it. It's a really great experience.
Perfect. That's a wrap, Gio. Thanks for sharing. I'm having so much. Wait, can you have FOMO after the fact, or is FOMO only before the fact?
Maybe it's fear of missed out.
Missed out,
Yes. I have fear of missed out. 100%. I'm not going to miss another one. So, well,
Well, we miss seeing you there, Jamie. It's always
I
good to see you.
know.
Next time.
Yep.
The beauty of it, San Francisco's in her backyard, so she has no
Yeah.
excuse. Literally, I'm timing this one around. Like, what dates are best for you? And she's like, well, Dagny gets out of school here and there, and so she has no excuse for missing San Francisco
I'll be
whatsoever.
there. I'll
And you
be
get to sleep
there.
in your own bed. What's better than that?
Or not. Or, make sure I'm staying out for the fun.
Who's better you sleeping in, Jamie?
Saucy.
Hey, Kurt, it was great getting to know you a little bit more on this trip and hanging out. I really
Likewise.
enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too, man. It's so good. Did Sib tell you about the circle?
She didn't, but you mentioned it, or someone mentioned it, but I didn't
Yeah,
hear about it.
and it was funny. We were doing the tours, and we were just like looking at this like design, and I was like, is it me only, or have you noticed this circle with lines on either side, like everywhere we've gone? And then all of a sudden, Sib's like, oh yeah, the eye of Mexico in front of Annie's building, right? And then all of a sudden we saw it everywhere. So it was like this like weird phenomena.
Oh,
that,
that's
like,
wild.
yeah, and then I texted you the
didn't-
chair because when Gio took me to his favorite restaurant, and they were like fixing up chairs, and all of a sudden it was on the chair. I'm like, this is weird now.
Oh, that's cool.
Mm.
Yeah,
It was really cool getting to know you, Grant.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, more to come, I hope.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you're kind enough to let us come hang on in May, so
Yeah, looking forward to hosting you guys.
yeah, man.
Cool. Love it. Okay. Thanks for sharing so that I could create my FOMO, and we'll see you next time.
All right.